This is Heath Sanders, and you're listening to TNCRadio.live.
Get with Ron Frazier for Truckers Life Radio at 9, 8 Central Mondays on TNCRadio.live.
You got to mind your trucking business day after day, night after night. Cause if you mind your trucking business, you're gonna succeed, you're gonna be alright. We're gonna talk about hours of service and federal regulation, logs, taxes, IFTA, fuel and maintenance, insurance, permits and tags, hiring and firing and heavy use tax. Make sure you get paid for your loads. Hurry up and wait, it's a whole thing, you know. Delivery, docking, managing your routes, and don't forget about taking care of your health. You got to mind your trucking business day after day, night after night. Cause if you mind your trucking business, you're gonna succeed, you're gonna be alright. You're gonna succeed, you're gonna be alright. So mind your trucking business. So mind your trucking business.
Welcome in TNCRadio.live. This is Mind Your Trucking Business. I'm Tom Kelly along with Jamie Irvin and James Rogers. Guys, it's great to be with you here again this evening for another episode of Mind Your Trucking Business. First, introductions. Jamie Irvin, let's start off with you. Jamie Irvin's with the Heavy Duty Parts Report. Jamie, tell us how you doing and a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Well, hello, Truck Nation. Thank you so much for taking some time out of your busy schedule to listen to our show. I am doing great, Tom. Things have been busy. There's a real shift in the marketplace that we're going to talk about. And it does, for the first time in a while, feel pretty good. So I'm excited to kind of dig into our conversation today. And yeah, it's been great the last little bit. Summer's been treating us really good in northern Canada. We haven't had any smoke from wildfires from California or anything like that, like we did the last couple summers. So we've been having a good time.
Fantastic. And James Rogers, who's actually driving today. James, tell us what you're up to and what you do.
Wow, what's going on there, blue collar America? I'm actually just trying to work my way out of Chicago as we're talking here, but I'm the owner of Spark Direct. It's a 7-truck fleet currently, and I also run the Road Rage podcast. But yeah, like Jamie said, there does seem to be a shift in the market, maybe a little normalization, and it's interesting to see it happen, especially with what we've been through over the course of the last 2 years with the ups and downs and stuff. So things are good. I mean, obviously, I'm in the truck doing what I do, and there's a reason for it.
Absolutely. So I've got a couple of different articles here, and we'll kind of look at both of them. Some good news and some bad news, as they say. So let's talk about good news first, guys. How about that? So good news first. According to the ATA, they did this massive study that they do every year, talking to and collecting information from thousands of drivers all over the USA. I think it's just the USA. It could be USA and Canada, but all over the USA at least. And they're looking at not only fleet owners, but independent contractors. I mean, you name it. If you drive truck, they reached out and talked about compensation. They do this each year. So they have published here in the last few days, and you can go to the ATA website and buy their study, get the whole study downloaded, and talk all about it if you want to. But for our purposes, we're just going to look at a couple of the headlines here. They're saying the median truckload driver earned more than, get this, $69,000 in 2021. That's an 18% increase. That's an 18% increase from the year before. That doesn't sound too bad. Let me hit a couple more of these, and then we'll discuss it a little bit. More than 90% of truckload fleets raised pay in 2021. More than 90% raised pay. And 96% of fleets offered referral bonuses for new drivers. Okay. Then yeah, that's very interesting. Every less than truckload fleet surveyed raised pay in 2021. Every single one of them. And the median salary for a driver in a private fleet, $85,000. Let's look at gross for just a moment here. Non-drayage owner operators that reported to the survey saw estimated median gross revenues of $235,000 in 2021, while owner operators in the drayage sector saw median gross revenues of $164,000 in 2021. So that's
Tom, can I ask something about that gross number?
sure.
Are they paying like their truck payment and fuel and insurance out of that?
Yeah, that's what I was wanting to, getting ready to ask that.
I would assume so.
Okay. That's what I thought as well.
Okay, so that's the gross number. So that's one picture of what's out there. I tell you what, before we jump in talking about that, let me give you a different picture. Now, here's the bad news. The American Transport Research Institute, also known as the ATRI, also reports that 2021 was a record for the cost of trucking.
Yes.
Cost of trucking, soaring prices for diesel fuel, rising maintenance cost, higher wages for drivers, etc., pushed the price of operating a truck up 12.7% in 2021 to $1.85 per mile. So the analysis of operational cost of trucking determined that higher fuel prices were the biggest contributor for this gain, up 35.4% compared with 2020, which we all know hard to compare anything to 2020. Repair and maintenance costs spiked by 18.2%. Costs across the board were going up, as we all saw in 2021. It's kind of a perfect storm, guys, if you will. The cost of everything went up. I think we see some of this also reflected in inflation costs, as all of these costs for shipping goods across the U.S. and Canada went up. That also increased the cost of goods as well. So this survey incorporated data from 173 truck tractors, 552,000 trailers, and more than 14.6 billion vehicle miles tracked. So, I mean, these are very in-depth surveys, and again, you can go to ATRI or go to the ATA, get the entire report, download it, put it on Excel spreadsheets, and sit there and play with it all day if you want to. But guys, we're not going to do that. We're going to just talk about what the impact is. We got a couple of minutes before we're going to take our first break, but I wanted to get initial reactions. So let's start off with you, Jamie, since I picked on you first earlier. Tell me, what's your knee-jerk reaction to hearing this? Surprise, no surprise? What's your thought?
No surprise. My knee-jerk reaction is immediately I say, are you better off to be a company driver where your personal expenses are going up? Therefore, your net income will probably, even with a raise, will go down this year. Are you better off in that position, or are you better off as an owner operator where you have rising costs to operate your truck and rising personal expenses? So my knee-jerk reaction is, after a detailed analysis of that, which position are you better off to be in 2022 going into 2023? That's my question.
Yeah, good questions. Good questions. And of course, 2021 did not see the huge impact in diesel costs that we saw in 2022 so far. Remember, when we started the year, this may seem like ancient. Did either one of you want to take a guess what the average diesel fuel price was in January?
Oh, I mean, I know for us it was up around 425 as a fleet.
Yeah, that's what people think. But actually, back in January, across the U.S., the average price for diesel was still in 3.72.
Oh, wow.
It wasn't until February that things started shooting up, and in February it was over 4. By March it was over 5, and it's been over 5 since. But a lot of the expenses that impact the overall cost of shipping didn't hit until the middle of the first quarter.
Yeah.
So things are, I think when we look at this data next year, we're going to see that, percentage-wise to the year before, huge increase. They're talking about a 34% increase between 2021 and 2020. Between 2022 and 2021, much steeper increase. So that's a great question that you're asking, Jamie. James, I want to get your take on all of this and your thoughts about what all of this means and our approach to it. And we'll do that when we come back in just a couple of minutes right here on tncradio.live. Mind your trucking business. We'll be right back.
Ready for the power of positive and something that will put you back to a time you wanted to last forever? Music is the ultimate time machine. What was your favorite time? Do you want to go back there? LTD Radio features the songs of the 70s, 80s, and 90s that will transport you to a happier time. It'll make you smile and brighten your day. We could all use that about now. TNCRadio.live is proud to carry the great music of LTD Radio.
I'm Hope Savara. Join us on TNCRadio.live at 7 p.m. Eastern with Building Strong Minds with your host, Dr. Christopher Cortman.
TNCRadio.live, your commercial driver navigation station.
Welcome back to Mind Your Trucking Business on tncradio.live.
Thanks, Ron, and welcome back, everybody. tncradio.live. This is Mind Your Trucking Business, and I'm Tom Kelly. I'm here with Jamie. You doing all right, Jamie?
I'm doing great. So happy to be here.
All right, and James, how are you doing, James?
Oh, I'm doing good, despite trying to get out of Chicago traffic.
Oh, I hear that. Wow. We report on Chicago traffic on a daily basis, talking about what all's going on. And this particular week, I don't know what's going on, but this particular week, it's been a tough week up there with Chicago. Yesterday, we had 2 accidents with 2 different tractor trailers and fires, and then multiple accidents that happened behind those 2 accidents. And it was just a mess all afternoon, all day yesterday in Chicago. James, let's get your input on, we discussed in the segment just before this one all about the rising cost of doing business in trucking. Now, here's the good news. Drivers took home larger paychecks in 2021 versus 2020. We don't have a problem with that. That's true, right? That's not suspicious. Yeah. That's right. We took home bigger paychecks in 2021 than we did in 2020. But we've got an issue in that, of course, 2021 saw its share of inflation, and the cost of diesel prices was significantly higher in 2021 than it was over 2020, and it's 2021 had a lot of increases in other costs, maintenance cost, parts cost, and I want to circle back on that one with you, Jamie, in a minute. But before we do, James, your take on this good news, bad news that we're reporting from a couple of different sources.
I'm like Jamie. Number one, I would ask the question of, is it better to be a company driver or even a lease operator? Weighing out those pros and cons very heavily, like he stated. But even further, me as a fleet owner, and I hear those numbers and I see what other carriers are doing, some of the larger carriers, obviously, it makes me wonder about what's the future going to hold. How do you need to attack this and look at it going forward? Because, you know, like you said, drivers did take home more at the end of 2021, and obviously coming into 2022, that continued to climb. It hit a peak. But just like anything else in life, what goes up must come down. So is there going to be money taken away? Is there going to be, what's going to be the true outcome of this? Because trucking companies are not going to take losses forever. They're going to find a way to recoup some of those profits in some form or fashion.
Well, I think we see some of that, but before I go down that for just a second, Jamie, you do an entire show and spend a lot of your time talking about heavy-duty parts, correct?
That's correct. You can listen to the Heavy Duty Parts Report wherever you get your podcasts or on heavydutypartsreport.com.
So in doing that show over the course of 2021, was it kind of acknowledged that the cost for parts was soaring? Is that what you saw?
So here's the situation that I saw with manufacturers and parts distributors. The manufacturers didn't know what their raw material and shipping costs were going to be. So we saw like maritime shipping costs explode. And so that has a big impact on landed North American cost of what I've got to sell this product that I've manufactured overseas. And let's face it, there's not that much U.S. manufacturing going on. Even the U.S. manufacturers are still, operating from a global footprint. So this had an impact on their business. So what that translated into multiple price files being issued by the manufacturers to their distribution network. So for those of you that aren't in the business and don't understand what that means is that my price today, let's say it's January 2021, my price on January 1st was not the same as my price on February 6th, and it wasn't the same price on March 8th, and it wasn't the same price on June 4th, and my price went up again in August, and then it was shifted again in October. So you can imagine, as a parts reseller, you're like afraid to kind of commit to any long-term pricing, because you might quote some national fleet that you're doing business with, or even a regional fleet, and you say, hey, this is what your brake shoe costs are going to be, or this is what your oil costs are going to be, or this is what your replacement parts in this category or that category are going to be for the year, and your price goes up 6 times over that year. So then you're forced to revisit your pricing to your fleet customers, your repair shop customers, and your owner-operator customers. So 2021 saw a combination of constantly changing pricing and that pricing going up. And we're not just talking like a point or two. These prices were going up in multi digits, like 10% or more, sometimes per price increase. But then on top of that, lead time was not guaranteed. So I saw manufacturers quote lead times of more than 52 weeks. And as one distributor says, anything more than 52 weeks, that's not a lead time, that's a wish. So what that all did to the operator of a truck is they got that price passed on to them. And so their cost of acquisition went up. And a lot of good deals you might have had secured in the years before because of maybe volume purchasing disappeared. And so we just saw a real shift in all of that on the part side. And then in 2022, as we moved into the first half of 2022, this just basically was compounded by high diesel cost. And so then the shipping costs, not just maritime shipping, but also over the road shipping, that went up big time as well. So now the parts distributor had to pass on the freight cost of getting the part from the port to the distribution center, and from the distribution center to the retail store, and from the store to you, whether you came into that store and bought it over the counter or they delivered it to your repair shop. So that's what the last year and a half has been like. And it's been dynamic and very, very challenging for everybody.
Yeah. And I appreciate that, Jamie. That perspective helps a lot. It makes me wonder, and I'm not quite sure where I'm going with this question in the sense of does this require then parts own, those who sell parts to have some kind of weird pricing system that maybe didn't exist prior to now?
Yeah.
Okay. What are they getting creative? I guess is my question.
So the thing that happened, well, first of all, I think you need an understanding of how pricing works at a parts distribution company. So if you're going over to Truck Pro or Fleet Pride or one of the dealership groups and you're buying parts, what they have is they have list price. And off of list price, they usually have 5 discounts. And those 5 discounts, the discount gets larger as you move down the matrix. And so if you have the first level of discount, you're just a walk-in owner operator, maybe, that's what you're buying at. And as you buy more and more volume, you get bigger and bigger discounts. But then on top of that, you have pricing contracts that get locked in for certain price, certain volume commitments. So if I'm a fleet and I want a better price on my brake shoes, I'll come to a certain parts distribution house and I'll say, look, I'm going to give you all my brake business. I'm going to give you all my filter business, and I'm going to buy my bulk oil from you. So I need my brake shoe cost to go to this level. So that kind of special pricing gets put under contract for a certain specific time. Sometimes it's 6 months, sometimes it's 12 months. And those special prices are loaded into the ERP system of the parts company, so that any parts person who brings up your account, it overrides whatever price discount you're set at and gives you the special price. Special prices they're just gone. They don't exist anymore because nobody can quote six months or 12 months out anymore. So that's the big change, I think, in that perspective. And then on top of that, I think that price volume discount started to disappear as well. They started moving people up and not being so willing to give price discounts because they had no idea what their cost was going to be on the next order. And they were very concerned that they were going to start selling below cost.
Wow. That does make it difficult then to operate your fleet business, even if you have a small fleet, right, James? When you have to balance that together.
Yeah, it does. It makes it very difficult, especially for a smaller fleet owner, because you're pretty much having to bounce around to try to find the best deal possible. Because that was one of the biggest things that we had to overcome. On top of the rise in fuel as quick as it rose, was the number one, the availability of parts that, like Jamie mentioned, and even the cost of it. To go on top of that, like he said, a lot of it got passed on to us as the drivers. Not only just the cost of the parts, but also the rise in labor costs. A lot of these bigger shops, like the Fleet Prides, or even a normal dealership or a TA or Petro, they were forced to increase their labor, and that, I believe that was kind of tied to it as part of it. That it did. Our labor costs increased probably at least a good 5 to 10% alone. So it plays a factor.
James, let me ask you something. How frustrating is it when you replaced a shock 2 months ago on your truck, and that shock cost you $80, and then you have to replace the other side a couple months later, and you come in and now that shock's $120? So you walked in thinking you're going to have to spend 80, but now it's 120, because that's what happened when this dynamic pricing hit.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened. And personally, I experienced that. It wasn't with a shock. It was actually with airbags.
Right.
I went in and, I was able to get an airbag at pretty much about the normal price, right around between the $80 and $100. And I did. I went and got one last week to put it on, and it had doubled. And I was confused. I really was. Like, what happened? What happened in
sticker price shock
4-month period? Yeah. So absolutely, it plays a role, and it's very frustrating. And honestly, sometimes with individual owner operators or a one truck authority owner, pennies make a difference. That could put somebody out of business. It really could.
You betcha. All right, we're gonna check out for just a few minutes. We're gonna be right back. Today we're talking about the financial impact of the trucking business, what's going on in the real world today. We'll be back in just a couple of minutes. You're listening to TNCRadio.live. Mind your trucking business. Stay tuned.
I wanna rock!
Welcome into another edition of the Leadership Library, hosted by CEO and author Rocky Romanella. Rocky is the author of the book Tighten the Lug Nuts, The Principles of Balanced Leadership, and has over 40 years of business experience as a prominent member of the UPS Supply Chain Solutions team, as well as the CEO of Unitech Global Services. So sit back, grab your notebook, and take a seat, and get ready for this edition of the Leadership Library.
The focus of this episode is on mentorship. Let's turn the light to the other side of the table. How are your advisees evaluating your skill as a mentor?
That's a great question. And I think it's important that you want to be a mentor and that you take that role and responsibility of mentorship very personal, and you take it as a responsibility that you are proud to do and you want to do. I think that's important. So very similar to when you're mentoring an individual, you're mentoring an organization, and you're going through those saying, what are our strengths as an organization? What are our weaknesses? What are our opportunities for growth? And frankly, what are the barriers that could potentially prevent us from achieving those goals? And I'll tell you one real quick that, always seems to come up, and that's the concept of allowing your strengths to become your weakness. For me, for example, would be I'm high energy. I get to a spot early. I love to fix things. What's my weakness? High energy, get to a spot early, love to fix things. And so in my zeal to fix, I may be stepping on someone inside the organization. I may not be delegating. I may be micromanaging. So I think those same areas that make you a good mentor to an individual also help you to become a very good mentor with an organization.
How different is it, Rocky, coaching a team versus building an organization?
I tell you, they're somewhat similar, because when you're building a team, you're trying to understand everyone's role and responsibility. And what you're trying to do is allow individuals to become part of your team, not to lose their individuality, but to understand that their individuality has to be within the confines of the organization. I learned this during my days at UPS when I was responsible for the UPS store. We purchased it as Mailbox, et cetera, and rebranded to the UPS store. But the biggest thing I learned there was we had over 5,000 franchisees who were individual entrepreneurs, now part of a large organization. We wanted them to keep their entrepreneurial spirit, but they had to do it within the confines of the organization. I think that's the same thing as a mentor in building your team.
Great leaders challenge their people not to stop at the first right answer. Tighten the Lug Nuts is the book that will help you move past that first right answer to be more effective, more productive, and more successful. This book serves as a blueprint that can be easily applied by leaders, entrepreneurs, truckers, owner-operators, all of us in our everyday lives. This is one of the best leadership books you can read to help you accelerate towards your personal and professional goals. Plus, a portion of the proceeds will be donated to truckerschristmasgroup.org. Visit TightenTheLugNuts.com to order your copy today.
Ride with the Women Road Warriors Tuesdays at 8, 7 Central on TNCRadio.live.
All right, welcome back in. I'm Tom Kelly, along with Jamie.
Hey, how you doing? So glad to be here and love what we're talking about today. I think the truckers out there who are dreaming of becoming a fleet, they need to hear what we got to say in this next segment.
And James.
What's going on? Yeah, I'm excited about this next segment. This is actually a discussion that I've had quite often and I've actually had quite recently. So yeah, I'm definitely excited about this segment.
All right. So guys, here's the question. Let's say for a moment that somebody's listening to this. They're driving down the highway right now. They're working for a large fleet. And as they're driving down the highway, they're thinking, man, I ought to just go out on my own. Well, what is, there are a couple of options there, right? Okay, does that mean you're going to go start to build your own fleet? Does that mean you're going to go be an owner operator working for contract for somebody else. There's a lot of different approaches there. So I'm actually going to start with Jamie again. Jamie, when you hear somebody starting to talk about going out and doing their own thing, does that set off red flags for you, or are you thinking, yeah, now's the time to do it?
Well, okay, even just remove the timing right now for a moment, and let's just talk about a person who does a job like drives a truck, and they think to themselves, I have a dream of running a fleet. I want to run a business that does the thing I do as a job. There is a misunderstanding for most people who have never run a business before about exactly the process that and what it takes to shift from doing the job and shifting to running a business that does that thing. It's not as straight of a line as you would think. In fact, the skill set required to do the job is usually very different than the skill set required to run a business that does that thing. And so when people are starting to think about that, one of my favorite authors is Michael E. Gerber. He wrote a book called The E-Myth. If you're thinking about doing this, you should read that book. He calls it an entrepreneurial seizure. And when someone is gripped by this entrepreneurial concept, it's really important that they understand that they're giving up doing the thing that maybe they love to do. I have talked to so many people who love to drive. They want to start a fleet. And it's like, do you realize that by and large, one day you might have to give up doing the thing you love because you're going to be completely consumed with the running of the business and having other people do the thing you love to do. So there's a real need for us to have that conversation and really help people understand what it is they're actually getting into. As one of my mentors said, be careful what you wish for, you just might get it. So we got to make sure that we are putting you on the right path. Then the question becomes, should I do this now? Should I wait? When is the right time? And what circumstances would I need to have in order to be successful? And that's one of my questions too. Is it even possible for a company driver to go straight to fleet owner, or should they be an owner operator first? And that's really James' expertise, but that's why I was excited about talking about this.
Jamie,
oh yeah, absolutely.
Jamie, if only we knew somebody who had actually started their own trucking business.
If only.
Right.
Oh, wait a second. James.
Yes, sir.
Jump in and
yes, sir.
Give us your thoughts on the same topic here.
Well, and Jamie, maybe I should have went first, because what Jamie said is kind of going to tie in very well to what I'm going to say. Is this conversation is actually a conversation that I had recently with I had a brand new contractor that just signed on, and it's a conversation that I always have with anybody that wants to contract. Is I ask those questions. I'm not one of those, hey, somebody puts an application or they call and they want to sign on. We have a discussion to see, is this even feasible for you? Is this the right move? Have you thought about the T's and P's and dotted the I's across everything? Because it goes to, I look at it as, when you come into this, like you said, you're in a company position. Number one, the first thing you want to ask yourself is, can you afford to pay yourself the standard of living, right, as what you're making now? Can you afford that? If you look at it, if you were to go out and be an owner operator, by the time you buy your truck, you get your equipment, you set your authority up, you get the insurance done, and then you get to work. Can you afford to pay yourself what you need to support your home expenses? That's where it starts at, because it's not like going to a McDonald's and you say, hey, they say, I'm gonna pay you $15 an hour because, and you turn around and say, no, I need 30. Well, that's not going to happen. And it's the same way with your business, because if you think that, you're going to end up out of business just as quick as you came into it. So number one, can you afford to pay yourself that standard of living that you're maintaining now? If not, then you need to reevaluate, potentially just stay a company driver until you can get those costs down and under control. The other
Can
thing you want to look at is,
Hey, James, before you move on, can I add something to that?
sure.
So if you're going to be able to pay yourself what you used to make as a company driver, I think another thing you should ask yourself is psychologically and emotionally, can you handle doing all the work you used to do in your full-time job as a driver? And then on top of that, do all the work required to run the company now that you are responsible for. And on top of that, are you able to emotionally handle the stress of being responsible for all of it? And on top of that, will there be any time left for your family? Because I can guarantee you when you're done with them, there's not going to be 1 second for you. So do you have what it takes emotionally and mentally to be able to do all of that in addition to physically and financially?
Oh yeah, you're in my head. What you did is you just jumped right in there where I was going to take a breath, because I was going straight for that area right there next. Because for me, just speaking personally, I've been through it. And I do get that question. How do you run a company, a fleet, when you're in the truck? And then also, you got, with everything you just said, you've got time for your family. Well, the answer to that is this: is when I first started, I didn't. I truly didn't. Thank the Lord that I have a very understanding and loving and supportive family. Not everybody has that. And it is very, very stressful. Those first 6 months to a year. I mean, even up until like just about the end of last year, I ran hard. I ran just like any other company driver to try to continue to allow my company the best opportunity to grow. And it was a struggle for my family to get through that. So that's also ties into that. And then with, there's multiple other things that go with that is, you hit years like this, can you emotionally sustain that? Because it is an emotional drain. You're dealing with the company, you're on the road doing your thing, and then of course you go home and you're right back in it because now you got to deal with what's going on at home. Absolutely, that ties into it.
I think this journey, James, I respect your service to your country in the military, so I definitely will not speak to the strain for people in the military. But I think as a civilian, speaking just as a civilian, and I've had a rough life when I was younger, I got into some pretty nasty stuff, but I can honestly say that nothing in civilian life will be more draining, demanding, and grinding on you as a person than trying to build a business with little to no resources and kind of bootstrapping that. It is one of the and listen, I've struggled with drugs. I struggled with the wrong crowd when I was young. I went through a couple divorces. I've been through a lot, and I'll tell you, there is nothing that has put me through the ringer more than trying to build a business with little to no resources and basically just shoestringing the whole thing and trying to make it work. It is really, really demanding. So, civilian life, that and a divorce, it's probably the two top things that I've gone through in my life that were the most difficult.
Absolutely. And I think for me, that's kind of what lended me an advantage. Maybe advantage isn't the right word, but maybe an experience that I had already gained was I am a veteran, and the stress doesn't really affect me too much as far as when I'm concentrating on the business. Where the stress came in was when I would go home. And that coupling that with trying to do the administrative part of the business, as well as making sure that I dedicated the time I needed to my family. And then also, like I said, managing finances. Then of course, as you're growing, you're adding drivers, your compliance, you're upgrading that. I mean, it got to a point where, yes, I did have to hire somebody, which is where it tied into your segue there, is that there's a lot to it. There's a lot to it that people seem to not want to look at, or they just walk through it kind of eyes closed until it's too late. There's a caveat to that, to where I think that, I guess I'll just say this. Do I think a company driver should jump straight from a company driver to a fleet owner? No. I think what should happen is a company driver should find a very good lease program at some point once you get some experience and get into that. Because with most lease programs, you have a safety net of that bigger carrier. That bigger carrier will give you something to fall back on, or most of them are walk away. So if it doesn't work for you, then you can walk away from it, and it doesn't really hurt you.
All right. This is a fascinating discussion. I really appreciate it, guys. Tell you what, we're going to take one more break here. We're going to be back and wrap up this conversation right here on Mind Your Trucking Business on tncradio.live. Stay tuned.
Hey drivers, did you hear music on tncradio.live that you really liked? Or maybe you heard us interview an author of a book you'd like to read or listen to. You can get the books, music, and other products you hear about by going to our website at www.tncradio.live and clicking on the shopping cart.
Catch Landline Now every night at 11 p.m. Eastern Time, along with an encore presentation weekdays at noon, right here on tncradio.live.
And welcome back in tncradio.live. You're listening to Mind Your Trucking Business. Spirited discussion. Really appreciate it. Jamie, let's kick it right back over to you. You had some thoughts. Where are you on all this?
Okay, so if you are a driver right now and you're dreaming of starting your own fleet and running a fleet business, I want you to really take some time to think about why you want to pursue that goal. In our last segment, James is a veteran, and he can say that only his military service was more demanding than running a fleet. So in civilian life, other than maybe going through a brutal divorce, there's pretty much nothing else that you will experience that will be more demanding on you than trying to build a business from nothing. It is a tremendously difficult path, and it takes from you financially, physically, emotionally, spiritually, the whole work. It really, really does impact you in every sector of your life. So before you go down that road, I think it's so critical that you take some time to figure out why you want to build this business. Myself, I have a very deep insecurity about my future because I grew up extremely poor. I grew up with parents who were hard workers, but basically were financially illiterate. I had none of the advantages that many people have. And I also, in my early life, got involved in some pretty nasty stuff, and I went bankrupt. And at one point, I didn't even have a home. I lived in a warehouse for a few terrible time in my life, living in a warehouse and basically being homeless. So I have been through it, and I know what it's like to have nothing. And I'm really scared about, living my whole life, working my whole life, and having nothing at the end. So for me, I view having a job like renting an apartment. It does the trick, but you have nothing at the end of it. So for me, it's why I bought a house. I wanted to pay that mortgage off, and I wanted to have an asset I got to live somewhere. Might as well live in a house that I can actually have an asset at the end of my working career to do something with. So I look at building businesses the exact same way. I'm not renting my job. I got to work. I'm going to work no matter what. So if I'm going to work building an asset that when I'm done my working career, I will be able to sell. And I've already done this once with a contracting business, built it from 2009, sold it in 2016. Now I'm building a consulting and media company right now. And we'll see, I plan on doing that to the rest of my working career, but I want to have an asset at the end of my working career that I can actually sell. For me, the only reason to start a business is so that you build something that somebody else wants to buy. That's my why. In addition to that, I believe that the trucking industry is the backbone of society. And so for me, it is a sacred obligation to take everything I have learned and serve the trucking industry, because by doing that, and again, I've never been in the military. So as a civilian, this is one of the higher callings that I can do, where I can actually serve my immediate community, the larger community of my nation, and of the US and Canada. So for me, I have these two very, very important things that drive me every day, that make it worth it to go through all the challenges and difficulties that go along with being a business owner. And so because I've got that figured out, when things are bad, I can always go back to this. I'm serving the trucking industry. It's the backbone of society. It's a sacred obligation. I'm paying the price today so that in the future I have an asset to sell, so that I can take care of my family and I can take care of myself in old age. This is what motivates me. If you don't have something figured out, it doesn't have to be the same thing, But if you don't have a why just as strong as that, you're not going to be able to weather the ups and downs and the difficulty. And it's going to cause you a lot of grief.
Oh, absolutely. And for me, I mean, you said it right there at the end, you know, you don't have a strong why. My why, to go off that, is that a little over 6-7 years ago, you know, I was doing nothing at all. I had literally survived suicide and an opioid addiction, and decided, hey, I figured out what I was missing. Why was I in that position? And what it was that lack of servitude to something bigger than myself that I was enjoying when I was serving in the military before I was medically retired. I started this business. You know, I was blessed with Progressive Commercial and St. Christopher's Fund awarding me my very first truck. And they, you know, I got my authority started, and here I am today with 7 other trucks. And my why is this, just as simple and plain cut as this, is that to me, the trucking industry is the civilian parallel to military service. Why? Because we serve something greater than ourselves. We play a very, very small piece in this whole big puzzle. But yet we are probably the strongest and most powerful piece in that game. All right, it's just like a chessboard. You know, we may be the pawn, we may be the queen or the king, but yet this industry is the strongest piece. You know, everyday civilians do not know what we're moving. They don't know what we're hauling. They don't know why we're hauling it, you know, but yet it goes somewhere. And to me, that is my driving why. And what it turned into is when I was blessed with my very first truck, I told myself that day that I was blessed. Somebody blessed me. I'm starting this business. I am going to continue to pay it forward and offer opportunities to other individuals that want to be owner operators. And also I'm going to continue to pay it back to this country that has turned and given me so much at the same time. And that's as simple and as cut dry as I can do it. I mean, I'm very passionate about this industry, very passionate about what I do. And that's as easy as I can put it.
And to tie it back to our opening segment, you might not make as much money as a company driver for quite some time. There is also a big myth that just because you own a business, you're going to be rich. That's not necessarily true. It might, you know, it takes a long time to build up that asset to a point where it's providing you with an above average income. In fact, the early years of running the business, and I do mean years, you may have a below average income. So it's an addition, like personal income is what I'm talking about. So it's an additional strain on your family and yourself financially on a personal level while you're trying to reinvest every dollar earned into the business. You know, another really strong why for someone, and for me, I care about this, I know you do too, James, is how many W-2s can you create? Right?
Correct.
In Canada, they're called T4s. How many jobs can you create? Because that changes people's lives. And that's something too. So there's a number of very powerful, strong reasons to start a business. But you getting rich shouldn't be one of them, because the chances of you getting really, really rich is very, very small. And even if you do get there, it's going to take you maybe a decade or 2 to get there. So, you know, there's got to be something a little more of substance than just a selfish desire for wealth.
I mean, you're absolutely correct. And that's, you know, it's a part of the conversation that I do have and I tell them, if you think you're going to come into this starting your business to get rich, you're going to fail. You've already set yourself up for failure. You know, we've mentioned it off air. I've been doing this going on 5-6 years now. And on paper, you know, this is the lowest salary I've ever made, even lower than the military, what I got paid with the military. And the reason being is because I'm trying to reinvest as much as I can back into the business to give it every opportunity to grow. And that it's a true statement that you have got to have a strong why, and you have got to have that conviction. You've got to have that support, and you've got to stick to it, because there will be hard times. This last year and a half, 2 years has not been easy, especially for the individual owner operators, authority owners, small fleet owners. It has been very, very difficult. And it even gets more difficult when you have employees or if you have other contractors working with you to keep them motivated and keep them going. I mean, it really is. I'd say that's probably the hardest part of it, is the emotional strain and the stress to maintain that conviction and belief and keep moving forward.
All right. Hey, great discussion today, guys. I really appreciate it. Coming to the end of our time together, so briefly here, let's check in. Jamie, we talked briefly about the Heavy Duty Parts Report earlier. Tell us, how can people learn more about that and you and all that good stuff?
Yeah, head over to heavydutypartsreport.com. That is our home base. That's where all of our content and links to podcast players and to social media and all of that. And you can always find me on most social platforms under Jamie L. Irvine. We are always looking to talk to people in the industry, and we're really trying to help people lower cost per mile, get the tools and the technology and an understanding of what it takes to really help truckers and fleets drive that cost per mile down with high quality parts. So come on over and check out the Heavy Duty Parts Report. We got a new format coming in September. I'm very excited about. We're going to be covering a lot more subjects in one episode, and it's going to be very dynamic. I think you're going to love it.
Fantastic. And James, how about for you? How can people learn more about you and what you're doing?
Yeah, currently I'm only on YouTube right now, so you can go to YouTube and just search the Road Rage Podcast, or you can search me up by my name, James Rogers, and we just go in there. It's probably a little more edgy than we are here, just because of the main audience is more truck drivers direct, and we talk about everything. We've gone into a very big discussion about AB5. We've talked about starting your authority. We talk about all of it from A to Z.
Fantastic. All right. And don't forget tncradio.live, your 24/7 source of trucking information. And, guys, we are always looking to build bridges within the trucking industry. And we want you to join us for, and we want you to join us for all sorts of different programming that we've got coming up, including a new show starting on August the 21st called House of the Driver. If you love Game of Thrones, you love football, you'll love this new show that's all about dragons and football each and every Sunday night just before the new season kicks off of football and Game of Thrones type shows. So we'll be here for all of that, many other things right here on tncradio.live. Stay tuned for more coming up next.
Do you have the TNCRadio.live app? It's free and easy to download. Just go to app.tncradio.live, Google Play, or the App Store. Get access to live streaming radio developed by drivers for drivers. Download the TNCRadio.live app today.
Don't forget, you can hear all of our TNC Radio primetime shows again on our podcasts. Just go to tncradio.live/podcasts or search for tncradio.live wherever you listen to podcasts.